As John told you, we're looking at a verse from the 5th chapter of Matthew, verse 40, from the wonderful aphoristic statements that Jesus made in the Sermon on the Mount. As you probably know, in some of the teaching modes that Jesus used, there was the parabolic type of commentary, where there was an external meaning that made sense. If you weren't thinking too deeply or didn't want to concentrate too hard on too much, the external meaning was perfectly fine. But if you thought about it a little bit and said to yourself, wait a minute, there's something more that I can take internally. There's a lesson here. He did a lot of this. And this is one of these kinds of statements. And the King James Version, which is similar to what John has put up there, and it reads, "And if a man will give thee at the law, and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also." Or it could be a coat and a shirt, or it could be a pair of pants and a belt, or it could be a Jezebel camisole and Steve Madden shoes. Whatever the combinations are, would be. If we bring them a little bit forward, that would be. But I want you to know that only a man would say this. No woman would ever be willing to give away clothes. Especially if she has really nice threads. I mean, I understand the idea behind this, but no way a woman. For Jesus, it's perfectly fine. Come on. He doesn't have a steady job. He's an itinerant minister. He's doing a lot of walking around and going from town to town. I mean, what kind of luggage does he have? Probably maybe an extra pair of sandals or an extra cloak that probably one of his followers is carrying for him, so he probably doesn't even have to carry it himself. Easy for him to say. You could give up your shirt and your cloak and all the rest of it. But whimsy aside, I know what the meaning of this is. We're talking about classic non-attachment. Don't get too stuck on the things that you have. So that if suddenly some of it leaves, or some of it departs from you, or you lose some, or somebody takes it, it's not that big a deal. Now, in the world of affairs, when we get down to, as we're coming to the end of our lives and such as that, we get more aware that things don't cut it. Things are not that big a deal. Money is nice. I love money, actually. I love cash money. If the government ever, in its wisdom, got rid of cash money, I would go into mourning immediately. Because I love to carry cash. I love it, especially the new colored stuff. Especially the $50 bill. That is a prize, with the American flag in the background. But you get my meaning. It's fun, but these are things that can be gotten rid of. These are things that can be given away. Because we are talking about what's important. And what's important is to be able to let go when it needs to happen, to let things pass from us when we no longer need them. What is important, what is not important. Now, I grant you, over time this changes. When we're very young, it's one thing. But as we get older, and let's say more universal in our thinking, then certain things that were very important at one time don't mean anything at all. I've thought through some of the decades of my life. I won't tell you which ones. But some things that meant a whole lot just don't matter that much anymore. And I'm happy, in many respects, that is so, because sooner or later, everything will leave. Everything will be taken from us. Some things that we were captive to, the things that we own will be captive to, they'll be gone. For instance, my husband and I enjoy a particular coffee shop that we attend for breakfast most days. Now one day, that'll be gone. They'll sell it, or they'll get rid of it, or they'll just let it go. And if we're still on board, we'll have to say, gotta do something else. Or closets full of clothes. You understand the cleaning out of closets so you can get rid of all kind of old stuff. And the reason for getting rid of all that old stuff is so you can get new stuff. You were already ahead of me here. Why get rid of old stuff if you can't put new stuff in its place? But the idea of non-attachment, not being so So kept, and so hanging on to what we have allows us not to be captive to what that is. See, the more you have, the more you're captive to it. The more it manages you. If you have holdings of any kind, you have to pay attention to what they're doing. Are they making enough? Are they losing money? When you don't have any, I don't recommend that necessarily, but when you don't have any, you have a lot less to think about and a lot more time to see what's important, what's not. Where's my spirituality? Where am I finding the opportunity to live a wonderful spiritual life? So we are attached and then we are not attached. And I'm going to ask John if he'll put up a little graphic that he made for me on the degree of attachments in our lives. So take for a minute, look at the upper left. It says low participation, low attachment. Now if you think about that, what that means is, I don't care. I don't care one way or the other. I don't care what comes, I don't care what goes. I don't necessarily recommend that because it tends to mean that we're not very present. That we kind of drift along with whatever is happening, that we have little to say, or we have little that we care to say about what's going on in our lives. So I don't necessarily recommend that. Now in the lower quadrant on the left-hand side, it says low participation, high attachment. Now there is some concern in that because these are folks who want things, but they don't want to have to do anything to get it. This is the meaning of real entitlement. We don't have to talk about Social Security or any of those things so much as I have something coming to me. I'm alive, I'm walking the earth, I have things coming to me. I'm entitled. I don't have to do much. And if you think about entitlement, the only entitlement we really have is that first breath. After that, everything eventually is up to us to choose, to decide, to expand, to learn, to grow, to discover our spirituality. You know we don't have to get spiritual. We just have to understand it, discover it, and open to it. That's what oneness means. If there is a truth, if there's only one life, that life is God, that life is perfect. We are one with that life. We don't have to get this. No matter how good we are, we don't have to get this. No matter how depraved we may be, we don't have to get this. It's part and parcel of who we are. So we don't have to say, I've got to do this or I've got to do that. But we do have to participate, and we do have to be careful and be cautious and be interested in what's going on. On the upper right-hand quadrant, it says high participation, high attachment. Look out below when you get this, because here are people out there really working, really efforting, and they have in mind, boy, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and at the end, I'm going to have that, and that. Mm-hmm. Nice work if you get it. But what happens if it doesn't quite work out that way? Maybe that relationship that you were really efforting to have, that you were really making yourself 50 pounds less or whatever you might want to do, and going to charm school or whatever, maybe it didn't work out anyway. There's a great deal of pain in that when there's a lot of attachment. Now the one that's supposedly the delightful one is the lower right-hand quadrant. High participation, low attachment. Perfect. I'm in. I'm in on the journey, I'm participating, I'm fully alive, I'm fully awake, and however it unfolds is however it unfolds. I don't mean to say that we don't have some things we'd like to see happen, not by a long shot, but I am saying that the participation, the putting ourselves forward, is really where it is. I can give you all kinds of ideas to think about today. Do I have an attachment on what you're going to do with them? Not particularly. There may be some that will be interesting to you that you'll want to look at some more, but maybe not at all. And that is not my business. My business is to bring to you what I know. That's what ministers are on hand to do as far as I'm concerned, not to tell you what to do, not to tell you how to do it, but to bring out some things for you to consider to enhance your own spirituality. Because as an old friend of mine once said, we are here to be healed, revealed, beings. That's why we live, to be healed, revealed beings in 10,000 zillion different ways, in the ways that we choose. Thanks, John. I'm thinking about the fact that attachments come in interesting ways, and they not only happen to do with things, but they happen to do with labels, designations, ideas, ethnicities, and cultures. There's attachments to a good number of these things. And when I say that, I'm thinking, for instance, about that wonderful movie, Gone with the Wind, which I have probably seen 150 times. I have seen it so many times, I almost have the dialogue memorized. In fact, when they come to another scene, I know just exactly what they're going to say. So, and I'm thinking of, in this movie, of the time in which it was set. It was the Civil War time in Atlanta, Georgia. So about this time, there's a place in here where Sherman has made his march through Georgia and left a great swath of destruction. And we find ourselves at the train yard in Atlanta, where they're bringing in wounded soldiers. And the good ladies of the town are helping. They're tending to their wounds and being very righteous and being very good, and they are. They're being very helpful with this. And at the same time, there are other people in this town who aren't necessarily considered good ladies. In fact, there's the madam of the brothel named Belle. Belle is a very insightful lady. We know that because earlier, Red Butler, the grand hero, Clark Gable himself, has gone to talk to her about some of his problems, and you can tell by her listening that she's thoughtful, that she understands, that she's sympathetic, and that she cares about some of the folks here. And we see her doing this again in another way, because as the good ladies of the town are looking for help and looking to take care of the wounded soldiers, Belle is coming toward them. Now she knows that she's not welcome. They are attached to who they are. They are attached to the fact that they're good ladies, they're righteous ladies. They do not want to have somebody on hand that is unrighteous, not one of their culture or the way that they do things. They're attached to that. But Belle wants to help anyway. So she comes forward. She knows she can't be there with her presence. So she brings a gift of money so that they can purchase what they need. And as she approaches with tentativeness. And the good ladies of the town simply turn away and won't have anything to do with her, except for one. And that is, if you remember, that's Melanie, who is also one of the good ladies of the town. But Melanie is thoughtful, Melanie is loving, Melanie is understanding. She understands how hard things can be and how people sometimes have needs that are different than hers. So Melanie goes to Belle, smiles and thanks her and takes the gift. Now what's happened here is that Melanie set aside her attachments to labels, to things that should be and things that shouldn't be, and took the gift at hand. Now if she refused it, there would be a gift that was lost, a gift that could be used well, that was lost from them. So in this kind of non-attachment, we also see that gifts come. Because when we kind of crack ourselves loose from the way we think things are, or the way we think things should be, sometimes we get a wonderful opening. Emergencies can do that. You know that? Ever thought about that? Sometime when an emergency comes up, in fact, those of us who are well-ordered, that means make that controlling. But well-ordered. You have the day going in such and such and such a way. We're going to do this, we have an appointment here, we have a hair big thing here, or something else here, or a lesson of some kind, so the day is all planned out. Well, what happens if something shows up? If you're lucky, it's just a flat tire, something like that. But maybe it's a real emergency. And when real emergencies show up, it means that we have to kind of tear ourselves away from the current attachment and take care of the emergency. We have to think differently. We have to think anew. We have to say, what needs me here? What do I need to do here? and be willing to make that turn to do it. Non-attachment will allow that. I'm thinking too about Mozart. It was said that Mozart, when he wrote his music, took it down as if by shorthand. That the music just came through him. And so he just wrote it down. In fact, the manuscripts that were of his music show there weren't changes, weren't scratching out, weren't things like that. The music just came to him, he wrote it down, and then he gave it away, he gave it out into the world. Once it started out as inspiration, then he captured it, then he put it down in recognizable form. Now it's not inspiration anymore, now it's out for people to use and to enjoy, which is exactly what I have just done. I'm going to shamelessly flog my new book here. Because I like Mozart. Not quite as cleanly as he did, because I had to work with these things. But I know something about gathering things from the infinite mind that we have privy to use. So I gathered from infinite mind ideas for 45 little essays on everything, and that's what they're called, essays on everything, which you can get at Amazon.com right now. But what I did too is I gathered in the ideas. I love doing that. I really do. I love putting these things together, thinking through them, writing them, correcting them, finding another word. I play with words all the time anyway. But then once it's in final form, now it's not mine. The inspiration is in here, and now it's put out as a form for other people. I'm not attached to it anymore. It can have its way. It can do what needs to happen. And for that, I'm very happy about that. Very much so. Normally, I don't necessarily sell church. But I do recommend that people have a spiritual philosophy or a belief system of some kind. I really do recommend that. The first minister I ever knew in religious science, 40, 50 years ago, used to say, she was tall and elegant and a Viking, and she'd say, I wouldn't walk across the street to convert anyone. And I thought, gee, that's missing a few things maybe. But then I got to understand why she said that. She just had what she had to lay out there. Here is a system that you can think about, that you can practice, that you can make your own if you like. I like to do that too. But I also recommend that whatever it is, that one find a system so that they can have at their backs a fallback. Because sooner or later, no matter how willful we are, how able we are, how attached to our own skills and such as that we are, there will come a time when they won't be enough. And we're going to need something greater than ourselves. That's what a belief system will do for us, to allow us to enjoy something greater than ourselves, because I like to say that God has our backs. No matter where we find ourselves, in whatever situation, God has our backs. Rumi is a wonderful poet of the 13th century, wonderful Persian poet. Was really kind of crazy. He was crazy in love with his God. And his poetry suggests that. Lots of people love Rumi. There is a little 3 or 4 lines that he wrote that I really like. And he says, beyond ideas of right doing and ideas of wrongdoing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. And I take that to mean that let's step out of all the labels and the attachments and the things that we think are right and things that we think are wrong. If we step aside from that, we enter into a pristine element of oneness where everybody lives. And if we will let that go and step out together into this field of oneness, we can enjoy wonderful things.